Hello, happy dreamers. This is Star, and today I want to kind of do a continuation of the last video that I did. My last video, which I'll link below, I talked about my journey to an ADHD diagnosis. And yes, I have to take notes while I do this so that I can stay on track. So I'm going to link to that. But right now, I want to talk about how I'm still kind of in shock from the diagnosis and what, other people's reactions have been. And just kind of a little bit more of an understanding of myself that I've gained from having this. Um, and I want to, let me do my Pomodoro timer um, using Toggle ADHD video. Still in shock from diagnosis. So we'll have that, and it will let me know 25 minutes from now when I am hopefully done. I don't want to go too long like I went with the first video. I want to kind of make some bite-sized chunks, interesting and meaty and long enough for you to kind of get really some details from it, but also I don't want to overwhelm you. I told my mom to listen to the first video, and she basically kept walking away from from the phone. I don't want that to happen to you. When I have something that interests me, and this is a trait of having ADHD, I can tune in and we can hyper focus so much to where it's like you can't tear our attention away. But I just want to respect people's time. So, still in shock from the diagnosis. One of the things that happened to me once I began um, kind of researching ADHD is that I began to really feel a lot of resonance with some of the material. But the one mistake that I made is that I don't think I researched enough. I mean, I read some articles, I became really interested in people talking about ADHD, but I think some of the lectures by some of the doctors who really understand different aspects of it would have been really beneficial for me. For instance, today I had kind of a meltdown with the partner that I mentioned before. For lack of a better word, I'm just going to call him a partner. We haven't defined our relationship, and it's actually very beautiful that way for me, because we keep showing up every time because we want to, and we're not obligated to. It's truly something that we desire to do, which is keep showing up for one another in support of one another's growth in all ways. Um, I mean, I guess it sounds like a polyamorous relationship, but I don't want to add that element into my channel right now because I just feel like it would be a lot. But really, I just want to focus on the fact that I felt kind of a situation happening within me where I got really worked up about him not being available for me, as far as time wise. So I looked at it as, right now it could be because I'm not employed at a 9 to 5 situation. It could be because I'm actually just taking a lot of time to do self care at this point in my life. If you look at my last video, you'll realize that I actually went through a lot and I've gone through so much this year. I've lost dear friends, put on 2 events. I started a business, which is basically like having a baby. All of these things that take a lot of time, and I got this diagnosis. So, still being in shock from that means I'm still coming to terms with my identity and having ADHD and what that means for me and my relationships. So, having the aspects of ADHD that is emotional dysregulation, it means that ADHD affects my emotions as well. It means that things that wouldn't bother people as much really get me worked up and excited on a good note and negatively. So this is one thing I've noticed because I'm always observing and comparing myself to other people and noticing that the things that piss me off don't really piss them off as much. Like, for instance, when I was in teaching fellows, They didn't pay us for 3 weeks, and I was livid. I was about to quit, and I refused to quit because of that, but it was hell having to choose between, you know, what did I have to choose between? Oh, transportation and food. I was so angry and livid, and I don't know if anyone else was in my situation, but they didn't seem bothered. Meanwhile, I was enraged, and I had a really hard time keeping my facial expressions neutral, keeping my body neutral, keeping my emotions regulated. I felt very powerless, and so that actually made me feel enraged and angry. Of course, it wasn't right what they did. They say it was just a bank mistake, but to me, I began to spiral out of control with thoughts that they were actually testing us and seeing who would be able to deal with these types of stressors and therefore be able to survive as a teacher in New York City. Um, that's just one example of the way that I noticed that I wasn't really, because I was the only one who would ever speak up and ask the question, when are we getting paid? Like point blank, I was not afraid to, because I was like, come on, guys, we're not here doing this for free. And I have bills and expenses. I had relocated back to New York for that reason. And it really, and everybody on Reddit was like, you really should have, a couple months income saved up because it takes some time. But either way, I'm just like, okay, I really noticed that about myself. But of course, when I look back at my school experience as, K through 12, um, from fifth grade on, especially, um, just the way that the curriculum is whitewashing as a student, you're getting these messages that you're not really kind of like good enough, or that your ancestors were like, their history only started with slavery. And even though we didn't have the language around that at that age, you kind of just felt intuitively that something was wrong with the curriculum and what you were being taught, or at least I did. And I did not have the ability to keep quiet about it. In fact, now that I realize it, there's no reason why I should have. But for behavior's sake, even if it was to keep me out of trouble, I was not able to do it. This is one of the symptoms of ADHD. Now, how it translates into relationships. When I felt worked up, it's like when you haven't seen someone that you really love and enjoy being around for a couple of days, and they begin to tell you about some of the things that they were doing while you guys were apart, and they tell it to you as if, like you're kind of an afterthought, in the sense of, they're like, oh yeah, I did A, B, C, and D. No malice involved. Totally just neutral. They're just giving you information, and you can do the same for them. And you know that you're not doing that on purpose. It's just like you're just telling them your life. But for me, the sensitivity, the fear, well, not really fear, but the sensitivity around being left out and not being included in things, which comes from some experiences that I've had, really just made me feel like, okay, I need to tell him that I can no longer do this anymore. I cannot continue to put myself in a position to be around him and then not be around him, because the not being around him feels so bad. So actually, everything is perfect, and I love the way he treats me. I just need more of that. So since I can't get that, I'm going to cut myself off cold turkey. So I've tried this before and it doesn't really work. And it ends up making things really awkward and kind of gives a negative vibe, and puts him in an awkward position at times. But it's what I feel, and I totally understand that my feelings are valid. I get that. But I also understand that there's a way to express them so as not to be emotionally dumping on another person, because I know how it feels when someone does that to me and I don't like it. So I don't want to do that to someone else. Little did I know this all had to do with ADHD. So in just realizing this, doing a little bit more research, the emotional dysregulation is something that, knowing about it, frees me and liberates me so much. It is extremely validating for me to hear others talk about this, um, in a scientific way, but that's why I'm kind of trying to give my story from a personal point of view so that other people can relate. Because sometimes they don't want to hear the jargon and the theory and the science around it. They just want to hear someone else's experience. So I feel like maybe I'm kind of filling that space. Um, with that said, though, and I hope it's helping, by the way, because it's helping me. So it's got to be helping somebody else. With that said, um, yeah, that's one of the ways that I'm still in shock from it because I'm still learning about it. I'm still learning about myself. And at 34, right? Is that okay? I feel 28, right? So I don't know how old I am. I always say that, but let's just say that I'm 34. Um, I really just, it's weird to feel like you're learning so many things about yourself at this age. It's weird to feel like the issues that have always caused you problems in the past in your relationships are because of a condition and a brain difference that you didn't know that you had, that you struggled with the challenges of having for your entire life. It changes your life. So if you're just newly getting diagnosed as an adult with ADHD, trust me, you are not alone in feeling extremely isolated, different, angry. Because one of the things that I heard someone say about it, he got diagnosed when he was in his 40s. He was a man, he was saying that it takes you to a dark place of thinking about what could have been if you knew that you had this. But I would say this, even if you knew you had ADHD, right? Before being an adult, who's to say that you wouldn't have also negatively labeled yourself then? At least now we have more understanding of mental illness in general. So again, I wouldn't call it a mental illness per se, but I think that is under the same umbrella of just like mental issues and challenges and everything. So we have more of an understanding, we have more compassion. So honestly, I would say it's a blessing to be diagnosed as an adult, even though you, as a child, you may not have known what to do with that information, and the adults taking care of you may not have known what to do with that information. So actually, just kind of count your blessings in terms of saying, hey, at least I'm being armed with this information now as I am an adult and as I am able to do the necessary steps. If you're watching this video, then you obviously took an extra step and you wanted to learn a little bit more about someone else's experience, and you probably are looking up the science, looking up the studies, reading the articles, or maybe not. Maybe you're not a reader like that and you just want to hear people talk about it. Whatever it is, I'm proud of you. I'm so proud of you. I just have to look at the camera and say that. Like, sometimes we need people to just say that we're okay, right? That's There's nothing wrong with that. So, um, I'm still in shock. And one thing that I've learned is that time really does heal a lot of wounds and trauma. Well, I wouldn't say it heals trauma in the sense of, I believe trauma has to be expressed through the body. At some point, you have to say something or let yourself feel something to get past trauma. But I do think that in time, you can actually get to a place where you're ready to do that for yourself. So maybe in that way, time does heal trauma. But um, time is good in terms of like smoothing out the wrinkles and the creases in your understanding of something, and just allowing you to go to a place of, centeredness and say, you know what, I'm ready now. An interesting thing about time, I was telling my friend that, like, I know that every time I have an idea, excuse me, I actually take maybe how many weeks or months before I actually execute. This channel has been on my mind, and I knew that I was going to have to do it eventually, you know. So I'm going to put the videos out as I do them. I do have a plan in my mind of getting together a whole batch of videos and releasing them one week after the other. But I have a little bit of a resistance around that because I don't trust myself to actually be consistent with that. So I'm like, well, there could be one or two videos that can help someone right now. So why wait in putting them out? especially as YouTube verifies my channel and I'm able to go live. I think that that would be a much better option for someone like me who really just needs to do things on the fly when I want to do them. One of the beautiful gifts of ADHD, and I like the way that Jessica puts this, is that our brain has two time zones, now and not now, and it's usually not now. Um, but for me, I feel like it's usually now. But I do agree with the fact that those two time zones are now and not now. And now feels like the time for me to do something. That's when I do it. Maybe it means that I'm living more through my intuition. But in this world, two things. In this world, I do think that we have to kind of conform to this world in a way that allows us to achieve our goals. And secondly, um, I think that part of being human is allowing ourselves to grow in ways that are challenging to us, but that also work with our strengths. So, you know, even though I'm coping with the understanding that I have of myself right now, I know that there's different parts of me that have yet to be realized. And so I generally have a positive outlook about my life. I realize that I may be living at home longer than I originally expected. I realize that my ideal relationship may look differently than I originally expected or have expected, because I expected different things in relationships throughout life. And I'm okay with that. And thirdly, I'm realizing that I have so much more to learn about ADHD. It is just enormous. It is the most well researched mental condition. However, how much of that information how much of those studies have been done on Black children, on Black teens, and on Black adults and Black women? I really wonder. So, guess what I'm going to be doing tonight? Oh my goodness. All right, so video number 2, we did it. Like I said, I kind of want to keep it under 20-25 minutes. I kind of feel complete right now. So I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye. Happy dreamers. Goodbye. I don't know if I have that many resources. I can point you to the other videos about emotional dysregulation that I wrote, that I actually looked at today, and my experience with that today made me realize that, first of all, he's such an awesome person to just listen to what I have to say, but I also kind of have some language that helps me not blame him when I'm feeling worked up about something. And I didn't send that email, the email that I was going to send, because I was going to send too long of a message and basically say, we need to stop seeing each other so often. We just need to do something different. We just need to. And it's just like, okay, that really wasn't the solution, because that's not really what I wanted. What I wanted in that moment was to feel heard mostly, but it felt like a super intense feeling. It felt life and death. And that is one of the aspects of emotional dysregulation. So I guess that this video should be entitled that Emotional Dysregulation and Shock from the Diagnosis. Okay, so thank you. Thank you for listening. Just remember that you're awesome, and God bless you. And, you know, you got this. You really, really do. Peace.